A common thread on this channel I like to push on you guys is make sure the gear that you're buying is something that you're going to use and get the full value out of. I could definitely tell you that I've made some bad investments over the years, and I've made some purchases of stuff that I thought I was going to use right and stuff that I was going to get some value out of, and I really didn't get the value out of some of these things. So in this video, we're going to be talking about a purchase that I made that wasn't necessarily the right purchase. It wasn't a bad purchase, but it wasn't the right purchase for what I intended on using it for. Before we get started, if you have any questions, comments, or anything whatsoever, please leave it down in the comments section down below. I'll be happy to answer any questions you guys have. If you want to ask me more directly, I stream on this channel and on Twitch every Tuesday and Thursday. Here, about an hour or so, and then I move over to my Twitch channel, twitch.tv/ghettohappy, and hang out, play games. Also, if you found this video helpful, entertaining, or anything whatsoever, please leave a like and consider subscribing. So as you can imagine from the title and the thumbnail, this video is about the Yamaha MG10XU audio interface / mixer. Now before we get into the Yamaha, I'm going to just talk quickly about how tech has changed from when I started working with audio to now. And when I first started working with audio seriously about 10-11 years ago, the audio interface was not really a device especially as we know it now. The audio interface was basically a mixer that was an analog device that was used for better part of a century before that, and we needed to find a way to convert it to a digital signal, which we used an A to D converter, audio or analog to digital converter. Those at the time were probably the size of the first iteration of the Xbox One, or maybe even bigger, right around that size, so you guys can understand it. You had to basically send this analog signal through this device and to your computer. It was a bit convoluted, but it's what we had. Nowadays, forget it. You got audio interfaces all over the place. The one that I'm recording into right now is the Zoom F6. It's an audio interface, a mixer, a field recorder, all in one, in a tiny little package about a quarter of the size of what an A to D converter was, and that was just to transfer the signal. You also have devices like the Go XLR, this Yamaha, and they all work great. They all really do a good job at transferring a audible signal, an analog signal, and do it all in one little box. And it's really cool. I mean, I know a lot of people nowadays take it for granted, but for me, it's really cool because I grew up with stuff that wasn't this convenient. The next thing I'm going to get into is who's this interface for. This is for a couple of people. Now, the first category is people who are musicians. So if you have a guitar, multiple guitars, multiple singers, it has 4 XLR inputs, so you can get a decent amount of content in there, and you can bring it to a DAW, a digital audio workspace. The other group of people are streamers. Now, mainly gamers or people that do music streams or anything like that on Twitch, YouTube, or anywhere that you could stream to the internet. The only issue I have with that is, with streamers, I feel like this is overkill, at least in my opinion, and especially for the price when you compare it to other interfaces in that price range and cheaper. The reason why I say it's not for your standard everyday streamer is a lot of times you only have one input that you're using, meaning your microphone. And if that's the case, then you can just stick to a single Focusrite solo and you'll be fine. Yeah, sure, you don't have the EQ, you don't have the compressor, you don't have the pan, anything like that, but a lot of times you could get in OBS a lot of those peripherals. Now, it might seem like I'm bashing this interface. No, quite the contrary. I'm just informing you guys this might not be something that you need specifically. It's a little overkill and might not be for you if you're a single streamer like me. Like, I just am one person and I only need one input for my audio. So if you made it this far, I appreciate it. And if you skipped ahead, that's totally fine too. I'm gonna go deep into this thing and dive into the specs and talk about it. But before we do that, let's show this thing off and give it a little montage. So in that montage, you notice that this thing has a lot of knobs, a lot going on, and it's really intimidating to some people, especially people who are not audio people. I mean, it's got a lot going on and it can be intimidating. But I'm going to show you some specs, some parts of it that are a little redundant, and maybe show you that it's not as scary as it might look. Starting off with the first two channels, which are pretty much the same exact thing, so that narrowed it down a little bit with the intimidation factor. We have two XLR/quarter inch inputs. So you got a 1/4 inch in the center and an XLR around that is a dual use. So you could put a guitar or you could put an XLR mic into it. Next up, we have a pad and a high pass filter. So your pad is at 26 decibels. So if you click that in, you will drop your input by 26 decibels. In my opinion, it's a little drastic, and the fact that you only have the one option, it's a little It's just not something that I would use. Maybe you might. Next to it is the high pass filter at 80 Hertz, meaning that that shelf, if you know how an EQ works, that shelf is brought up to 80 Hertz and you don't hear anything below that. I don't really like using those peripherals, the pads and the high pass filters, because I like to get the raw audio. But I understand that there are some scenarios where it's easier to do it before, but I've encountered those very minimally in my career. Moving down the slope, we have two knobs of the first of many knobs that are going to be coming up on this audio interface. So these knobs are your gain knobs. That is the amount of audio that's coming into the microphone. And for some people who are new to audio or just have no clue what signal chain is or how it works, basically the first line of defense is your preamp, which is the XLR input, which is tied into a thing that adjusts that level of how much audio is brought in. So when I'm speaking right now, for example, I'm around like 12-ish decibels, roughly. That knob is adjusted to the point where I'm allowing 12 decibels in. That's not how much that's going to your interface. We'll get into that a little later because there's another step to it. Actually, there's a bunch of steps, but essentially with signals chains, there's the preamp, and then we move forward. But I'll get into that in a little bit, so hang in there. Next up underneath that, we have a compressor. It's just a simple 0 to 10 compressor. What a compressor is basically is it takes your highs, your really, really high sounds, and your really, really low sounds, and they compress and brings them closer together. So if you got a lot of loud things and a lot of soft things and you compress them, it brings them closer together. Little bit of compression. It'll go a long way. Moving along, we have the EQ knobs, and you have a high, a mid, and a low. So your high is at 10 kilohertz, your mid is at 2.5 kilohertz, and your low is at 100 hertz. And you can add more high end, like if you add more high end right now, that's what you're gonna hear. Try not to do too much, otherwise it sounds funky. You can add in some more mids or take away the mids if you add too much or too little. It could be muddy. And the lows you can bring up. I use it a lot when I want to increase the bass in my voice or the bass in something I'm recording a lot in EQ. So there's a little EQ lesson for you. The next knob underneath that is your FX knob. This part is the amount of effects that is going to be allowed in. So your effects section is a separate section that has a level of its own. This knob is to allow a certain amount in, 1 to 10, and if you have like an echo on there, you can allow a certain amount of echo. It's not how much echo is on, it's how much you're letting in of that. A little bit difficult to understand signal chain, but I'm trying to explain it as best I can. Next up under that is a pan. Pan's very easy to understand. It stays in the center, and if you want more to the right, you go to the right. If you want more to the left, you go to the left. Now lastly, we have the output gain. Now this is different than the preamp gain. This is how, after all these things are processed and everything like that we just went through, your output gain is taking all that stuff and releasing it to your computer. And at this point, depending on whatever you have, you can have your preamp set to 10. If you only have your output gain set to 2, only 20% of that signal is going out. There's also a peak meter, so if that thing turns red, it means you're peaking, so back it off a bit, or maybe move back a little bit so you get a little indicator there. And that pretty much narrows down the first 2 channels on this recorder, which is going to make everything else go smooth because it's all the same. So we're going to breeze through 3 and 4 now. So 3 and 4 have the XLR / quarter-inch in inputs, the pad, the high-pass filter, and your preamp knob. All the same. Then you have your highs, your mids, your lows, the FX, the pan, and your output gain on the bottom. The phantom power, now if you have a condenser microphone, you need phantom power for it to run. So that's something you engage, and it's good for the first 4 inputs. It says 1-4 mic, and it's 48 volts. So if you have a ribbon microphone, do not turn it on while your ribbon microphone is on, otherwise it's going to tear it to shreds. So just a fair warning. Next up, we have the 5 through 10 inputs. Now these are pretty simple. There's no XLR, there's some quarter-inch and some 3.5mm inputs and outputs. I'm not going to go into depth with this because it's going to be boring and it's just a lot of information. So I'm not going to bore you with that. If you want any more information about that, please just ask me down in the comments, and I'll be glad to answer any questions you guys have. So basically you have your highs and lows for the EQ. Pretty simple, nothing crazy. There is no mid adjustment, but at that point, if you're at these inputs, you're probably using things that don't necessarily need a midsection adjustment. And you have your FX, your balance of the pan, and the outputs as well. All the same as the other ones. If you want to know more, like I said, in the comments, you could ask. Next, we're going to move back down, and we have a switch that's very important for you guys. If you want to go USB, which probably 95% of you are probably using this for it, click it in, and it will allow the signal to go through the USB cable, which is a USB B to A, I think, is the names of those. All right, so some final points. Basically, would I recommend this? Depending on what you're using it for. If you're a musician, I would recommend this because you could put multiple outputs, inputs to your output of a DAW and get some good value out of it. If you're a streamer and you don't plan on using more than one input, I wouldn't get this because there are plenty other options like the Go XLR, the Focusrite Solo, and a bunch of other. If you like this Yamaha and you like the build, you like the look, they have a smaller version which is only 2 inputs, which is also $70 cheaper. So if you want to get something like that, that's an option if you like this style of compression and all that stuff, EQ. In my opinion, I would save a little bit more money and get a Go XLR, the mini one, because it's $50 more than this and it's more value. You got a full EQ, full use of their software. Yes, software can be finicky at times, but at least in my opinion, when it's working right, it's probably a better option. And then hopefully after people stop gouging these prices, I could get my hands on one, which would be nice. So that all being said, thank you all for watching. Hope you all enjoyed it. If you liked that video, please hit the like button down below and consider subscribing for more videos that are coming out in the future. If you have any comments, questions, or anything whatsoever of what I covered or what I didn't cover about this, please leave it down in the comments section down below. I'll be happy to answer any questions you guys have. And if you want to ask me more directly or just want to hang out with me, I stream on this channel and on Twitch every Tuesday and Thursday for about an hour over here, and then over to my Twitch channel where I continue on with the stream. And yeah, so until next time, be safe, be kind, please wear a mask if you go out, and I'll see you next time.
I think this one has a lot of puzzles in it. There's like a waterfall and like some wheel. Wow. I just almost choked on my tongue there. That's always awesome.